Hello, dear listener, and welcome to Late of the Rings, a new podcast dedicated to Lord of the Rings, the card game. My name's John, and here's my co-host. He's often seen with the Horn of Gondor. It's my good friend, Emery.
Good afternoon, John. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad. Not so bad. Ticking on. And yourself? Been up to anything interesting?
I've been sitting indoors a lot.
Yes.
It's just to put it, if anyone's listening to this later, we're in late April now, and we're still in the midst of the coronavirus lockdown. So yes, again, plenty of time on my hands to sit around thinking about all the stuff I could be doing.
You're such an outdoorsy type.
I know, exactly.
I would just be inside anyway. It's nice in here.
And what have you been doing in there, John?
Not a lot. I have managed to play some Lord of the Rings, the card game, which is a big step up from last time.
It's a boon when you're doing a podcast, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it's certainly a step in the right direction. And I continued watching Star Trek, but I'm not going to. We won't dwell on that. And what else have I done? Oh, I tell you what, I finally finished watching the Dark Crystal series on Netflix.
Oh yes.
Other streaming services are available.
I'd completely forgotten that existed, even though I loved the movie when I was a kid. How was it? Was it good?
Stunning. It's better than any puppet show deserves to be. It's insanely good. It took me a long time to get through it because I kind of dipped in and out, and it's surprisingly long, as a lot of these series are. I think it's 10 episodes or even 12 episodes, all of like a full hour each. But if you are into fantasy worlds, which I think you might be, as a co-host of a Lord of the Rings podcast, the world they create is insane. I don't want to spoil anything in it because you and I both hate spoilers. But it's so rich and it's so beautiful because it's obviously vast majority of it is physical effects with real lighting on real puppets on real sets. And it's treated with such respect. I think it's Jim Henson's daughter who is the executive producer on it. And I was really impressed. I highly recommend it. Late of the Rings recommends.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. I mean, it's the lost art, really, isn't it? I mean, I guess we grew up in an era where we saw quite a lot of kind of puppets being used on the television, in films, and I think the advent of CGI kind of seemed to have killed that off. But it sounds like the potential is there for it to be as good as ever.
Yeah, it's the emotion that is conveyed by these puppets is beyond belief. And I mean, Jim Henson always said that actually the Dark Crystal was his favourite thing he ever made. He said it was the pinnacle of his achievements, and that's coming from the guy who invented the Muppets.
He wrote it all as well, right? The original. Yeah, it was completely his, wasn't it?
Yeah, he truly believed that it embodied everything that he stood for as a human.
How ironic. Well, that is the mark of a good piece of fantasy, anyway. I guess is obviously it tells you something about humanity, doesn't it? If it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I did say it felt quite long, but what is great about it being done as a series now is that there's really plenty of time given to flesh out the world that it's set in and the characterizations. So you really do feel for these little guys and the struggles they're going through. I mean, I think any fans of Lord of the Rings should find something to enjoy in the Dark Crystal series. So, yeah, check it out. So that's what I've been doing.
Sounds great.
Yes, and now I need to find something else.
Are they making a series too? No, come back to
Yeah, but I think it's probably going to take a bit of time.
Yes, I should imagine so.
Yeah, all the puppets are in lockdown.
Now that's an internet show I would like to see. Puppets in lockdown. out of character at home with the cast of the Dark Crystal.
Okay, so should we move on?
Let's move on.
Okay. So coming up in this episode, we're going to continue our look at the core set spheres. This week we're going to be focusing on lore. We're going to start looking at the quests which are included in the core set, starting with the first one, the introductory passage through Mirkwood, and we have our fact of the week and some other good stuff on the way. I'm actually going to start with a bit of news, though.
Okay.
We don't have any jingles, but imagine there was a news jingle. This is very exciting for anyone who's just starting out with Lord of the Rings, the card game. It's all in stock in America.
Oh.
I think everything apart from the last Saga box is available now from Fantasy Flight, which means it should be hitting your local game store pretty soon, which is incredible. I mean, I don't know how long it would take to get over to Europe, but usually it's a few weeks to a month later. It is a bit ironic that this game, which has been so hard to buy everything from, has just come into stock when there is a global financial crisis happening.
But also coming into stock where loads of people are sitting at home without an awful lot to do. So maybe they saw an opportunity.
Well, absolutely looking on the bright side there for sure. So all I say with that in mind is that if your finances do allow it and you are still looking to complete your collection, buy, because as we well know, these stocks do not often last that long. So get what you can is my advice whilst you can.
And is it worth saying for new players as well who perhaps wouldn't have known, like for example, I wouldn't have known unless you told me that I guess for the long-term future of the game is that I think they're going to carry on with some reprints for a while, but at some point in the medium term they're going to stop printing it altogether, right? Was that correct?
Well, no, they've not said that they're going to stop printing it. What they've said is there aren't going to be any more APs or deluxes after the current cycle. Well, actually, they've said it won't come back in its current form. So they've not. They're being deliberately vague, basically.
Right, okay.
So they've not killed the game by any stretch of the imagination. You'll see lots of threads about people saying this game is dead, and that's not the case. It's just they're not going to continue it in its current form. I'm not sure if they really know what the new form will be, but they do still hold the license, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't keep reprinting, because the printing phase of the job is the easiest.
Right. And they've just reprinted everything by the looks of it, so...
Yeah, so I wouldn't worry about
that's a good
that.
sign.
No.
Cool.
Although I would say, I don't want to strike fear into anyone, but I decided to get into Android Netrunner last year, and I bought their brand new released updated core set version 2, and I think 2 weeks later they lost the license and the whole game was shut down.
Oh. I've actually never... That is unfortunate. I've never actually heard of that. All right.
Okay, so that's the big news. Okay, so like I said, the two main subjects of today's show are the lore cards from the core set and also the first quest from the core set, A Passage Through Mirkwood. Now, I did intend that we'd go through lore first, Emery, but I know that when we decided to both revisit A Passage Through Mirkwood for this podcast, you took a specific lore deck into the forest.
Yes.
So I don't know whether or not you'd rather talk about the quest and how your cards dealt with it, or talk about the cards and then the quest that they faced.
It might be worth saying off the bat that yes, I did take a set with only lore cards from the core set into the forest, but they never emerged. So I think last week we touched on the fact that the tactics deck, if you tried a pure tactics deck with this first quest, you were very likely going to come a cropper, and that's exactly what happened to me. And trying it again now with just a lore set, a lore deck, the same thing happened, and I couldn't get through. I think I did a little bit better, but not a hell of a lot better.
So actually, it's a little bit irrelevant that you tried to experience with a lore deck. It's not really going to make you any more insightful Full stop. Full stop.
Yes. Well, actually, what it did do. So I think we also touched on last week that lore out of all the spheres was the one that by that point I had played with the least. So I have had a few quests with lore involved, but this is the first time I've done a mod. So what it did allow me to do was see some of the pitfalls as well of only having lore cards in your deck.
Yeah, I think it's especially starting out, it's incredibly difficult to build a monosphere deck anyway. You just don't have the variety and scope in a single sphere to be successful, I think. So, okay, well, I think that with that in mind, I think perhaps we should just start with the lore cards then.
Would it be worth mentioning? That in the rulebook that comes with the core set, it gives you 4 decks to play with, which is basically 4 pure monosphere decks. And actually using those decks, you can complete this passage through Mirkwood if you use Spirit and I think to some extent Leadership. I think I've completed it with both of those 2 before, but never with Lore, which I've only tried once, and not Tactics, which I tried the first time as well.
See, that's interesting because you've got the new core sets, which came with I think they call it a how to play book rather than a rule book. So my original rule book didn't have these set decks in it. It just basically said just grab all of the cards from one sphere and play with it. I mean, do they specifically tell you to take cards out?
No, that's basically what it is. It's called a learn to play.
Oh, learn to play.
And on one of the first pages there's a page called Player Decks. And it says, Lord of the Rings card games core set contains the following 4 starter decks. And essentially what it is, it's all of the cards from each sphere plus 1 Gandalf.
One Gandalf?
Yeah. That's basically what it is. So, for example, Leadership. Heroes are Aragorn, Theodred, and Gloin. Cards, all copies of cards numbered 30 to 27, which are all the Leadership ones.
Okay, yeah.
And 1 copy of 73, which is Gandalf.
So basically they're saying handicap yourself by only taking all the Leadership cards and, just for added measure, just take 1 Gandalf with you.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at these lore cards then. Shall we start with the heroes?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Let's start with Denethor. Denethor is a lore hero. He has a starting threat of 8. He quests for 1. He can hit for 1. He has a defense of 3. It's very nice too. And 3 hit points. He's Gondor, Noble, and Steward. He is the Steward of Gondor. And he has an action. Exhaust Denethor to look at the top card of the encounter deck. You may move that card to the bottom of the deck. So, Denethor's a weird one for me. Because when I read Lord of the Rings, and of course watched the films, I never saw Denethor as a hero. So, this is hung over me every time. Whenever I started playing the game, it was like, and if you look at his picture, he looks shifty.
He is a bit shifty, though, isn't he? Do you know how I always saw Denethor? I always saw him and Theoden having a bit of a mirrored story in that they were both rulers who had come under some evil spell. They'd both lost a son, and one of them managed to overcome that and regain his honor and his pride, and the other one fell into darkness and despair. And so I always thought that was a really cool kind of duality between those 2 characters. So I never really, even though Denethor did act in not a particularly great way in many ways and didn't show affection for his son until the end, there was still that goodness in him. You know, it wasn't that cut and dry kind of good and evil sort of thing. So I think he could be, in the right circumstances, he could be a hero.
Okay, well, I mean, that aside, I think we just have to accept the fact that in this game, he is a hero. It's written on him.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts about him as a card?
Well, so I actually used him for the first time yesterday when I did the Passage Through Mirkwood quest. I think his ability is actually extremely powerful. However, in the way my deck was set up and the way the quest went, I didn't really have the opportunity to utilize it. What tended to happen was I was having to keep Denethor ready so he could defend and use his free shield against some of these nasty enemies, which you do get in that quest.
He's a hell of a defender. I mean, whenever I play a lore deck with Denethor in, he is my go-to defender. And I think you're right. His ability is incredibly powerful. Unless you specifically have a quest which scrying the deck is vital for it to really know what's coming out, I would always just keep him as a defender. And if I happen to not have any engagements that round, then I'd use his action to have a little sneaky peek.
Exactly. What I was finding is when I wasn't defending, I actually ended up using him to quest because there's another card we'll talk about a bit later, which kind of not quite a duplicate, but has a similar kind of ability.
Well, let's just jump to it now. Which card did you have in mind?
Okay. Well, the card I was talking about was Inhospitality Riversong. He's one of the allies, and he's the cost of 1. He quests for 1. He attacks for 1. He's got 0 defense. He's got 1 hit point, so not particularly hardy in a fight. However, he has got a good ability. So here's Sylvan. His action is exhaust Inhospitality Riversong to look at the top card of the encounter deck. So what I found was I was getting this guy out early if he was in my hand, and I was pretty much using that every single time. So right at the beginning of every round, I'd exhaust him. I'd look at that first card of the encounter deck, and that would allow me to plan properly in terms of who do I need to quest, who can I leave back, etc. Do I need to leave someone to defend, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely a sound tactic. Of course, if you have them both in your deck, you could also use both their abilities. Of course, you could use Denethor, look at the card. If it's terrible, throw that card to the bottom of the encounter deck, then use Inhospitality to see what the next card is.
I did think that, but I never really got the chance to do it just because I couldn't afford to have them both exhausted right at the beginning of each round.
Yeah, I guess the timing there is key, that you could, if possible, leave them till the end of each round, so you basically exhaust them, do the scrying for the following round, and then refresh them again, ready for the next round.
And so what's that term you use? Scrying?
Oh, scrying. Yeah, I don't know if this exists outside of card games, but that's basically spying on the deck, having a little look through to scry the deck.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard that before. So okay,
you're a learned man, so then therefore it probably only exists in card games.
No, my vocabulary's not that great. It probably does exist.
Okay. Another thing about Inhospitality, I have a love-hate relationship with the artwork, because I think it's really cool, and every time I see it, it fills me with joy. And then part of me goes, oh, but he's so similar to Link from Legend of Zelda, and that slightly bothers me.
That's a computer game, right?
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda?
Yeah.
I've never played it, so I don't have that. He looks like a completely original piece to me.
Well, after this, Google it.
Okay, maybe, or not.
Oh yeah, or don't. Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss, after all.
Okay, let's jump back to the heroes then for 1 second. So the next one up is Glorfindel. What a hero! Now that's a hero.
Oh yeah, this guy's amazing.
Yeah, incredible. He is expensive. He has a starting threat of 12. But he does quest for 3. He hits for 3. He has defense of 1, and he has a whopping 5 hit points. He's a noble Noldor warrior, and he has an action. Pay 1 resource from Glorfindel's pool to heal 1 damage on any character. Limit to once per round. What a guy.
Yeah.
But he does have a crazily high starting threat.
He's extremely useful, though. I mean, to quest for free and to hit for free, and his action's very useful too, if you can get enough resource into your pool. Yeah.
So Glorfindel, I never used to play him very much in the core set days, mostly because I found that it made my my hero starting threat just way too high. because I think when you first start out, it does take quite a few rounds to complete each quest. So therefore, having a lower starting threat becomes almost a necessity.
Yeah, and I think there are definitely some quests, or one that comes to mind, which we'll discuss in a later episode, where controlling that is absolutely key to it. Otherwise, you can't actually complete it. From what I found, anyway. So, yes, I did find that playing Passage of Mirkwood yesterday. So I'll talk about that when we talk about the quest as well, specifically about that threat.
So we just quickly do the last hero?
Yeah.
Okay, so the last hero is Beorn, which is one of the characters that Fantasy Flight created themselves. She doesn't exist in any of Tolkien's works. I think when Fantasy Flight were putting this together, they obviously stuck to the source material as much as possible, but anyone who's read Lord of the Rings will know there is a distinct lack of female characters in the books. So rightly so, not rightly so that there's a distinct lack of female characters. Rightly so, Fantasy Flight decided that they'd have to right the balance slightly, and you'll see a few made-up characters. So Beorn is one of those, and she is a Dunedain Ranger, and she has a starting threat of 10. She has 2 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 4 hit points. So she is right down the middle. She does a bit of everything. But she does have a pretty awesome action, and that is exhaust Beorn to choose a player. That player draws 2 cards, limit once per round.
Yeah, she is great. I find her really, really useful because, as you say, she's an all-rounder. So if you, for any reason, you can't trigger her action and get those 2 extra cards for whatever reason, she's useful in any other thing that she wants to do, whether it's questing, attacking, or defending.
What I think is what's great about it is that you can actually choose a player to draw those cards. So whenever we play 2-player, we do tend to be on the greedy side. I mean, it's very rare that we'd ever play an attachment on each other's cards. But being able to choose a player to draw 2 cards, this is one thing. This is the gift that keeps on giving. If you know that your companion has something to cancel a shadow or cancel a when revealed, you can use Beorn to desperately try and find those cards.
So when you say we are selfish when we play 2-player, do you mean that you are selfish, John? Is that what you've been doing all this time?
They're my cards. Mine. If you wanted those cards, you could have put them in your deck.
Yeah. I see. Okay. I see you. Okay.
So those are the heroes. I mean, then they're not going to set the world alight, but you can see that they all have their respective roles. I mean, I think when you think of lore, it's very much a support sphere. So if you think about the various effects that the heroes can do, so you've got Denethor, he can control the encounter deck, which is incredibly useful. You have Glorfindel, who can heal characters, and you have Beorn that can draw cards. So that there's not much there which is actually helping you quest or helping you fight. But it just supports your own way of playing. So if you need some more cards, you can do it. If you need to heal someone, you can. And if you need to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Did Denethor have a Palantir?
Yes, he did. In the book.
That's why he can see what's coming off of the encounter deck.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think... They don't mention that in the film, do they? I think. No, it is in the book, 100%, but it's not in the film. And I think in the film, Aragorn, when he looks at the Palantir, when he looks at Sauron to lull him into opening the gates, that's the Palantir which they took from Saruman. But in the book, it's the one that Denethor has in his vaults in Minas Tirith, if I remember correctly.
Well, I think it sounded very confident. I'll go with it.
Didn't it? I just made it all up.
So shall we have a little look at the allies which are going to come along with you on this doomed quest?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a few elves and we have a couple of dwarves. So elves first.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
That's so like you.
Age before. Well, no.
No.
Well, no, they are older.
That's
they
true.
Are older.
That is, yeah.
Generally.
Don't be fooled by the beards.
Exactly.
Okay, so the first ally that I've got here is the daughter of Nimrodel, and she is a Sylvan, and she has a cost of 3. She has willpower of 1. She has no attack. She has no defense, and she has 1 hit point. That's pretty weak for a 3-cost ally. So let's check this action. It better be good. So, action. Exhaust Daughter of Nimrodel to heal up to 2 damage on any one hero. Thoughts?
Well, I didn't include her on my very first deck with lore, and I did include her on one from yesterday when I did Passage Through Mirkwood. However, I never got a chance to play her because of her cost. But I would imagine that in certain situations, that's an extremely useful action. She's someone you can just... You're obviously not going to use her for anything apart from maybe the occasional quest if you really need it. But she's going to be there just to heal damage, obviously. That
but
you might
she's
sustain.
so fragile.
She is. You're not going to put her in a fight. She could die anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, as we'll come on to later, there are some treacheries in the core set which will just wipe her out.
Yeah,
with no problem. For a cost of 3, I would at least like to see 2 hit points. But yeah, if you can keep her alive, good on you. That's a pretty powerful action for sure. So Hennemoth Riversong, we've done him. Glaewin, my least favourite art from the core set.
Yeah. Why is that?
I think it's his cocked head.
You're not a fan of a cocked head?
No.
You like a straighter neck in your artwork?
I mean, okay, it's obviously quite difficult to play this instrument that he's holding here, but don't milk it, mate.
I think he's got into the song, hasn't he?
He's a minstrel. We should be getting into the song. He's there for a job.
Okay. We're going to be talking off air about musicianship after this podcast. But I actually agree with you. I think also where he's got that kind of affected light shining down on him too. That is the original sort of artist's photo. You know, he's going to stick it on his album, isn't he? That one.
Glaewin's minstrel songs.
Yeah. It's Glaewin's greatest hits.
Okay, so enough about the artwork so Glaewin, he is a minstrel, as previously mentioned. He is he's not even an elf.
No, he's not an elf, no.
He's Rohan. I said we had a couple of elves and a couple of dwarfs. I jumped to him.
Yeah. The other elf was Hennemoth Riversong.
Aha, yes, of course. Okay, so Glaewin is a Rohan minstrel. A Rohan minstrel?
He's probably not popular in Rohan, is he? You can imagine they'd be more into kind of heavier stuff.
Yeah.
In Rohan. I mean...
this guy.
Gondor, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Gondor,
okay.
Not Rohan.
Not Rohan. Okay, so Glaewin, he's a cost of 2. That's more like it. He will quest for 1. He has no attack. He has no defense, and he has 2 hit points. See, look at these stats compared to your Daughter of Nimrodel. This is more like it. I take it all back. You look great, mate. And he has an action: exhaust Glaewin to choose a player. That player draws 1 card. I love him.
Useful, yeah. Well, you love anything that can give you extra cards, don't you? So, you like the lore set generally.
I do love to draw cards. Yeah, well, I take it all back. This guy's terrific. He's cheap, he'll survive, and he'll get your cards.
Yeah. What more could you want?
Well, a little less of the music whilst we're trying to ride our horses.
That's the price you pay, I'm afraid.
That instrument looks pretty heavy as well. Is this on the back of a horse?
No, he has to walk, surely. He can't have him.
Okay, no, he's good. I mean, what I'm noticing here is that a lot of the support cards of the allies in the support deck of lore tend to support the heroes that you already have. A lot of these cards are doing the same thing, but to a slightly lesser degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how Hennemarth River Song is to Denethor, so Gleowine is to Beravor.
Yes, and Daughter of Nimrodel to Glorfindel with the healing.
Yes, right.
So that's good. So I mean, so really, you could see how focused the lore deck is as a support deck. I mean, you really can. What it does well, and it does often.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a couple of dwarves. Now, I've got one I really lean towards because there's one I really like here. We'll do him second. First up, we've got Erebor Hammersmith. He's a dwarf craftsman. He's a cost of 2. He quests for 1. He hits for 1. He defends for 1. And he's got 3 hit points. So, pretty well-rounded there. And he has a response. After you play Erebor Hammersmith, return the topmost attachment in any player's discard pile to his hand.
That sounds really potentially useful to me, but I don't think I ever ended up using it.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that you can see the potential, but you have to almost structure a deck or a game style to fit his use. I mean, he's quite all right as a rounded ally anyway. I mean, 3 hit points on an ally for 2 cost is pretty epic. But for instance, if you had Éowyn, who we keep on harping on about, in a lore spirit deck, and you discard cards to boost Éowyn's ability, just a reminder that you can discard a card to give Éowyn an extra willpower each round. If you could structure it so you can discard an attachment, you could then bring Erebor Hammersmith in next round, and his response would trigger, and you could bring that attachment straight back into your hand. So you'd be able to boost Éowyn for essentially no cost.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking with this guy, and I've never tried this. I was thinking if you've got a couple of tactics guys, or one tactics hero in your deck, they get through a fair few attachments, which I think we'll sort of discuss next week, and that might be quite useful. When you've got restricted attachments, you can only have 2. You have to discard 1 if you want to get another. But then maybe you want to put one of those attachments on another hero, or whatever that situation might be. I think he could be useful for that scenario too. But like I say, I haven't tried that yet.
Do you know what? I think over my years of play, I don't think I have ever played a third restricted attachment, meaning that I'd have to remove one of the restricted attachments already on a hero.
That's a good point. I don't think I have either. But what, in my months of playing or weeks of playing?
I just think it feels like such a waste. As in, you saved up, you've bought yourself a nice axe.
Yeah.
Just leave it there. Leave it there on the banks of the Anduin.
Or there could be other, adventures later on where you are getting through a whole bunch of attachments, and as soon as you get one, you want to put it on, but then if you get a better one, you want to replace it, or so, which you can, but then you might want to use the one you discarded on another hero, say, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see whether that's useful, I think. But at the moment, I'm with you. Yeah, I haven't really seen the use for that yet.
All right, do you want to tell us about the final ally?
Yeah, this guy is... So there's another dwarf. This is Minor of the Iron Hills. He costs 2. He's got no willpower. He hits for 1. He's got 1 defense. And he's got 2 hit points. He's a dwarf. His response is, after Minor of Iron Hills enters play, choose and discard 1 condition attachment from play. Now there are certain quests where that is almost critical. If you can't, I mean, if you could end up with, without ruining or spoiling anything too much, you can get condition, I think it says this in the rules anyway, you can get condition attachments which go onto your heroes or onto an ally, which might prevent that hero doing certain things or what have you, limit that hero in some way. And I haven't seen any other way yet to get rid of the condition apart from this guy.
No, this guy's gold. For exactly the point you raise, there are some particularly nasty encounter cards which will put a condition on your heroes and allies, and this guy is, at this stage, the only way of removing that. Just as an aside here, you will come across cards which say that you can discard attachments that you control. It's important to note that if a condition comes off of the encounter deck that gets attached to one of your heroes or allies, you do not control that card. So you can't get around losing a condition attachment by going, aha, I can get rid of any attachment that I control because you don't control it. Sorry.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like the kind of thing that I would misunderstand and yet again inadvertently cheat on. So yeah, definitely worth pointing out.
So those are the allies. Yeah, so it's not a thrilling set of people, but they are indeed all pretty useful, just not in a fight.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't think I've played quite enough with law yet. I've only used law in conjunction with leadership so far, and then a pure law set, like I said yesterday. So yeah, I need to figure out how it synergizes with spirit and tactics as well. So I'll definitely do that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're building a pure support deck, I mean, spirit and law are great for this. I mean, they work really well together. But you'll find that in your own time.
Is it worth just explaining what a support deck is as well, just for people who might not know that?
Well, sure. So basically, if you were playing a 2-player game, it's not uncommon for one deck to be a heavy combat deck and one deck to support that deck. So you'll have one player who's basically taking care as much as possible of all the big bads, and then another deck helping get rid of shadow cards, get rid of when revealed effects, and heal and help each other draw cards. So supporting the players.
So one player basically essentially doing the questing and the fighting, and the other one supporting all of that.
Yeah, not necessarily just the questing, because there's a lot of support inside Spirit in the fact that they have all the cards for cancelling treacheries and cancelling shadow effects, and of course Spirit is the heavy questers. But it's mostly combat, to be honest.
Okay,
should we have a quick look at the attachments and the events then? Just a quick look over.
Yeah, totally. In fact, these are probably my favourite cards which I've come across so far in lore. The events.
Bold words.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my unlearned, I would say, about lore, particularly so far. But there are some really good ones in here. So,
which are the picks of your fancy?
Well, first off, there's the Lore of Imladris, which costs 2. That's an event, and the action is choose a character, heal all damage from that character. So if you've got somebody who's very close to dying, whatever it is, for the cost of 2, you can get rid of all of the damage on that person. So that's very useful.
Yeah, for sure, that's useful. I mean, it's not that expensive either. So you could definitely look at including 3 Lore of Imladris, and then maybe just skipping the Daughter of Nimrodal, because I got the hang up that she costs 3 and she's going to die. Whilst I would rather make room for the Lore of Imladris for sure. Yeah,
I guess the other thing is if you can keep her alive, you can just keep using that every round. However, there are other. Well, maybe it's worth talking about that sort of restoration of health kind of card. So the other couple in here, there's another event. Which is Beorn's Hospitality, which costs a whopping 5. However, this is an extremely powerful card, and the action there is choose a player, heal all damage on each hero controlled by that player. So, if you've taken a bit of a battering, and if you can give that to your fellow player as well, if you're playing 2-player, get rid of all the damage on all of that player's heroes.
You know what I'm going to say, though, don't you?
Too expensive.
It's 5. It's Gandalf. Gandalf cost.
You got to think about that, haven't you? It's like, if you're going to spend 5, is this better than Gandalf? I think I think you're always going to struggle to spend 5 on anything apart from Gandalf, if that's your general view on it.
Also, it's only heroes.
It is only heroes, yeah. That is true.
This is nothing. This is not going anywhere close to any of my decks.
Yeah. To be honest, I think you'd have to have a fair bit of cash lying around to chuck this one out. You know, it's and just to finish off the ones about healing.
Hang on 1 second.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
let's go. No. 1 second. Also, this is Beorn's hospitality. It's not very hospitable to charge you 5 to heal up. Come in.
Do you know what's less hospitable? It's like, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, please come inside. You lot, you're sleeping in the tent outside.
but we'll not
heroes only.
We'll not make the night. We've got injured men.
No, sorry. No. This is as far as my hospitality goes. It's a very exclusive establishment.
Yeah.
Can I just skip to an attachment very quickly?
You could do what you like.
So one of the other card in the core set, which is to do with healing, is self-preservation, which is a cost of 3, and it's a skill, and you attach this to a character, and the action is exhaust self-preservation to heal 2 points of damage from attached character. That's any character, doesn't have to be a hero. It's cost 3, so it's a little expensive, but you can use this every time. So if you've got a character you're constantly putting into defend or what have you, this is an amazing way to keep them alive. So on the odd occasion I did manage to get this one out, I actually ended up using this quite a lot, and I'm a big fan of this card, actually.
Yeah, it is a little costly, but it is powerful. I think this is probably the best healing card that you get in the core set for sure.
Cool, we're in agreement.
Had to happen sooner or later. Okay, where do you want to jump to now? You're dotting around all over the place.
So the other event cards, there's 2 which are similar. I think it's worth talking about those as well, because I think these are really helpful if you've got a lore deck. And they're Radagast Cunning and Secret Paths. They both cost 1. They're both events. They're both quest actions as well. And Radagast Cunning, the action is choose an enemy in the staging area until the end of a phase that enemy does not contribute its threat. So if you've got some nasty enemy with a threat of 4 or 3 or whatever, you don't want to, and it's going to stop you from questing successfully or whatever, you can use this card to stop that. And similarly, Secret Paths is basically the same, but for locations. So it says, quest action, choose a location in the staging area until the end of a phase. That location does not contribute its threat. It's extremely powerful. If you want to just need to get to the end of a quest card, say, whatever, you got 1 shot at it, you know you haven't got any enemies coming and this is your chance to do it. You might bring Gandalf out to help him to get you past that card or whatever. For just the cost of 1, extremely useful cards.
Yeah, I think that they're cheap and they are universally helpful. And just highlight one thing that we did mention in episode 1. It is a quest action, so these cards have to be played during the quest phase. And the only reason that's important, you couldn't just chuck Radagast Cunning onto an enemy to lower its threat, so therefore it didn't engage you during the combat phase. This has to be played during the quest. One thing which becomes very apparent once you start looking at these cards is how lore in general in the core set is very much focused on sort of encounter deck and staging area manipulation. So you have Denethor looking at the encounter deck. You have these guys making sure that the staging area is manageable. The other spheres don't tend to worry about that too much. They're more like, we will help you get through the troubles you've got. This one is very much focused on, let's keep these troubles to a minimum.
Yeah, that's a cool way to look at it, I think. Yeah.
And actually, with that in mind,
yes.
I'm now
You're going to go to the same place I was thinking.
Oh, well, I
go on.
Well, maybe not. Is the Forest Snare?
Yes, exactly. Possibly my favourite card in this whole set, in the core set, I'd say, for lore.
I am also a big fan of the Forest Snare. I mean, again, it's relatively pricey, a cost of 3. It is an item, it is a trap. It's an attachment. That's important, didn't mention that. And it states this: attached to an enemy engaged with a player, attached enemy cannot attack. And it also has brilliant artwork on this one. You got
I love it. I love the artwork on this.
I mean, I hate wargs in general. So to see one trapped under a net,
you're more a cat person, aren't you?
I am than a warg.
Than
Yes,
a warg person. What I love about this thematically as well is, so it's attached to an enemy engaged with a player, and as you alluded to last week as well, an attachment can only be played at the beginning of a round. So and you think about what this is, forest snare. So it's like you set a trap. So when it comes, you have to kind of lure it in first before you're going to set this off. So he or she does get a chance to attack you before you can use this, unless you can fend that attack off some other way. So it's got to be engaged first. So if an enemy is engaged, you'll have a combat round, and then at the start of the next round, you can play the attachment to snare that enemy. So worth bearing that in mind as well. If you have one of these in your hand, be aware that you're going to have to fight it first for one round at least before you can attach this.
Unless you have that ally that we mentioned last week from leadership, which can bring an enemy out of the staging area and immediately engage you. When that ally is played, I can't remember what he's called now. Go back and listen to last week's show. But basically, if you play this guy, you can bring an enemy out of the staging area before engagement, and then boom, snare him straight away. Very useful.
Very useful. There's another couple of useful ones here as well. Probably the last couple. We've only got a couple left anyway, but two which I have definitely used a fair bit as well are Protector of Lorien, which is another attachment. That's the title. Attached, costs 1, attached to a hero. Discard a card from your hand to give attached hero +1 defense or +1 willpower until the end of the phase. Limit 3 times per phase. That means that you can throw away up to 3 cards and gain up to 3 willpower or 3 defense. I found that I was having to utilize this a fair bit to get through quests when I had a pure lore deck. Might be less useful if you've got some spirit guys there, maybe. I don't know. But if you're using a lot of lore, it means you're probably going to end up having a lot of cards in your hand as well. So you might end up with some spares which you can burn to utilize the effect on this. And it only costs 1. So it's quite a good kind of get out of jail card, I found, that one. So I'm a fan of that one.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a real utility.
Yeah. And the other attachment, which I thought was very useful as well, was Dark Knowledge.
Oh,
this is great. So this one costs 1 as well.
Dark Knowledge. You found Dark Knowledge useful. That tells me a lot about your personality.
It probably does. Ironic, for somebody who loves to, more than anything, to get through for quests and without willpower, this one is an attachment which costs 1. Attached to a hero, attached hero gets -1 willpower. But the response is exhaust Dark Knowledge to look at 1 shadow card that was just dealt to an enemy attacking you. So that can be, again, extremely useful to decide on who you might defend with, how you're going to defend, can you afford to take an undefended attack or not, whatever it is. So I found this one really useful.
You see, I hate Dark Knowledge. I don't think I ever played it. Anything that makes you have to pay 1, and it makes your heroes worse. I mean, okay, it has a nice effect, but you're paying to make your characters permanently worse.
I think you're a bit afraid to explore your dark side, John.
I mean, I love the theme of it. I love the theme that
the theme's fantastic. Yeah,
that you are actually you're turning to the dark side. You're joining with Sauron for a second. I mean, it's sapping the willpower from you.
You're looking in the Palantir. That's why I put this one on Denethor, because he only quests for 1, right? So I think I'm not going to use him for questing generally. So I'll put it on him, but I can use this every single round to check a shadow card. I found it very helpful to plan my defenses.
You see, I dislike this card so much that if we were playing together and we both, for some reason, had a lore deck, I would play the Miner of the Iron Hills, and because Dark Knowledge is a condition attachment, I would remove it from your hero.
Oh, I see. Why would you do that? This is your... Is this your left-leaning...
I'm fighting on the side of good. You're just going around with your dark knowledge.
Yeah, but then Aragorn looked in the Palantir, didn't he?
And where did that get him?
On the throne.
Oh, semantic.
And peace and prosperity throughout all of Middle-earth. I think it turned out pretty well, actually. Look, all things in moderation, right?
A little bit.
Once around, have a little peek. You're not looking at every single shadow card, just one. It's fine.
Just a taste of, just a little bit of dark knowledge.
Just a touch of, just a little, yeah. It's like putting a little bit of spice on your food. You don't want to overdo it, or you just ruin it, and you're hot and sweaty and bothered. Or what is this? Just a little bit can add some, a little bit of deliciousness. That's what dark knowledge is.
I think we missed an event.
I think we missed 2 events. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
The first
that's your dark knowledge.
Right, you see. I think I'm losing some willpower. No, so Lorien's Wealth, cost of 3. Very straightforward. It's an event action. Choose a player. That player draws 3 cards. I think this is probably particularly useful in a 2-player game. I think if you've got lore, you're generally, I'm speaking generally, but you're generally going to be picking up a bunch of cards. So if you're desperate to find one particular thing in your deck, you might use this. I think this is more useful where you have a second player who isn't cycling through the cards as quickly. This is one where you can use to help out your buddy. That's the way I look at this one, or I've probably not explored it enough as in one player to really see the advantage of it.
I mean, I do see its use, but I do think if you are playing a lore deck from the core set, you've probably got Beorn in your hand, and she'll give you 2 extra cards each round regardless. So,
but you must exhaust her as well.
Oh, you really must.
You must exhaust her. If you had a way of readying her, then it was obviously a complete no-brainer. And we've got your favourite as well, Glaewing. You could also allow you to draw a card.
No, I've changed my mind about him. He's great.
No, I was being serious. Your favourite, yeah. You're going to go and buy his album after this podcast is done. Okay. There was one more event.
Okay, yeah, we got the final event, which is Gandalf's Search, a cost of X. Ooh.
Dun dun dun.
we've not had an X card yet. So, cost of X. It's an event and it has an action. Look at the top X cards of any player's deck. Add one of those cards to his owner's hand and return the rest to the top of the deck in any order. So basically what the X represents is how many cards you would like to look at, and that would therefore dictate how much this card costs you. So if you just want to quickly peek at one and get it into your hand, then by all means just pay 1. If you happen to be rich, chuck 6 resources at it. That's a Gandalf plus an extra resource, and look at the top 6 and pick a card and put the rest back.
If it's just one, you have to peek at it first.
Well, actually, it's interesting. It's interesting because what's interesting about this is, as a player, you play the event, but you could. I'm just reading it through. Check I got this right. You can look at any player's deck, but I would be if I was looking at your deck, I would be the one looking at the cards. You would technically not be allowed, by the strict rules of the game, to see what those cards are.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So I could look at them, I could choose which one to give you, and then I would rearrange those cards and put them back onto the top of your deck. Now, and in theory, because, well, we are going to do a feature on the rule of table talk in this game in a later episode, but in theory, you're not meant to specifically discuss cards in each other's hands. So in theory, I could say, I put your cards back. They're in a pretty good order. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I couldn't say Gandalf's next.
Yeah, right. Okay. If I was using this card on you, I would be putting Miner of Iron Hills as far back as possible, so you wouldn't remove my dark knowledge attachment when it came in.
Are we aware that this is not a competitive game?
Yeah, well, I didn't think it was until the beginning of his podcast. I thought I was the one for dark side. No, yes. No, you're quite right, Dave. I jest.
Okay, so that's all the lore cards. I think we pretty much covered everything there is to say. It is, as we said many times, a good support deck and unlikely to see you through quests when played by itself, which leads us directly on to you attempting to get through the first quest with a pure lore deck.
Yes. Passage through Mirkwood. Shall we talk about the...
Yeah, so what I want to do when we talk about quests, because we're going to talk about the various quests as we play our progression through the game. We're not going to go through every encounter card, or in fact even every quest card. It's more just to have a chat about how we found the quest. Did we think the difficulty level was too high, too low? Was it interesting? Was it thematic? And then during the process of this, we'll definitely mention some encounter cards that we thought were particularly nasty or particularly fun or particularly interesting. So where are we going to start? We'll start right at the beginning. The so-called introductory quest that they package in with the core set, A Passage Through Mirkwood.
Hello, dear listener. This is a warning to let you know that the next section contains spoilers for the Passage Through Mirkwood quest. If you wish to avoid these spoilers, you can carry on the podcast from 1 hour and 26.
So we both went back and played this again just to remind ourselves of what the quest entailed. The first thing that struck me is that the quest itself doesn't do anything, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you'll notice in later quests that most quest cards will have various conditions that are required for you to get past them. In Passage Through Mirkwood, you just need the quest points, which I think is very smart actually from the game. The first quest, you just have to quest successfully. It really lets you learn the mechanics of the game without bogging anything down.
That does also depend. There are a couple of conditions, and it depends which road you go down as well. I'm not sure how much. Do we want to talk about that in any kind of detail?
Oh yeah, no. We can. What we'll do is we'll go back and we'll put a spoiler warning on this.
Yeah,
so
fine.
I think we can just talk completely openly about the quest.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so we are assuming that, dear listener, you have attempted Passage Through Mirkwood a couple of times. Maybe you've completed it. Maybe you're a veteran who's just coming back to this. We are assuming that you're kind of familiar with this quest, and we're not telling you anything that's too kind of new here. So you're right. I think the first couple of quest cards are pretty much plough through it until you get to the last card. But would it be worth quickly just talking about what the quest entails and what the theming of the quest is?
Yeah, sure.
So according to the rules, Passage Through Mirkwood is a difficulty level of 1, which is the lowest difficulty level you can have. And it was surprising going back to this. I thought I'd sail through it straight away, and I didn't. So it just goes to show that any of these quests can be a challenge depending on which deck you're using. But just to read through what it says in there, it says, Mirkwood has long been a dangerous place, and recently one of King Thranduil's patrols has uncovered disconcerting signs of a gathering menace in the vicinity of Dol Guldur. A party of heroes controlled by the player has been assembled to carry a message through Mirkwood, down the Anduin, and eventually to Lorien, to warn Lady Galadriel of the imminent danger.
It's a Passage Through Mirkwood.
It's a Passage Through Mirkwood. And the first quest card for this is called Flies and Spiders. And it kind of reiterates what we just read, but it says, you are travelling through Mirkwood Forest carrying an urgent message from King Thranduil to Lady Galadriel of Lorien. As you move along the dark trail, the spiders gather around you. And the setup is, you need to search the encounter deck for 1 copy of the Forest Spider, 1 copy of the Old Forest Road, add them to the staging area, then shuffle the encounter deck. And then what you need to do to get through that first card is quest for 8.
Yeah, so the quest itself is not difficult, but the theming I think is lovely. I mean, there's lots of foresty locations and there's lots of spidery enemies. But the two things struck me whilst playing this through again. again, I thought it'd be an absolute breeze, and I did beat it on my first go. I was only using cards from the core set, so it's not like I took a full pool of cards and went, yeah, it's surprisingly easy. I can't believe you lost. I took a tactics spirit deck through it, but it wasn't as easy as I was expecting. So 3 things struck me: 1, particularly nasty enemies; 2, particularly nasty treacheries; 3, some surprisingly nice locations. And this is something which I don't think they ever revisited, is there are a good proportion of locations in here which help you out as a player. And let me see if I can find some here.
Well, I think the very first one. So the way this is set up is you end up with that forest spider on Old Forest Road up in the staging area. And Old Forest Road, the response there is, after you travel to Old Forest Road, the first player may choose and ready 1 character he controls.
Oh, and this was incredibly useful to me, because I think the first treachery card I drew made me exhaust a character that I was saving.
Right.
So that was lucky that I could travel there immediately. Yeah, and so another one I think is the Forest Gate, and that has a response that says after you travel to the Forest Gate, the first player may draw 2 cards. Oh, hello. I would just like traveling there all day.
But I think that's great, though, isn't it? I mean, that's perfectly fitting in with the theme, isn't it? There are certain places you go which are great and are nice. I guess there are certain areas of this world of Middle Earth where you're going to have fair fewer of those, but that totally keeps in line with the story, I think.
Yeah, so there are some nice parts of the forest. I mean, there's some particularly nasty parts as well. I mean, if you should happen to be walking through Mirkwood and someone says, let's go this way, it's much quicker, it's just the Necromancer's Pass, my advice, do not go down that pass. This has a particularly nasty travel effect that the first player must discard 2 cards from his hand at random to travel here.
Yeah,
that's just horrible.
But then again, this is why I love this game. Or one of the many reasons I love this game. It's got a threat of 3, and if you've got no way to reduce that, and it's just stopping you questing anyway, sometimes you know what, I've just got to go around without, or I've just got to get rid of 2 cards and just get rid of this. I've got to go through it. It's only
just got
2.
to go through it.
Yeah, it's only 2 to get through it. So, but yeah, it's fantastic. But that is a nasty one. And then you got one which is a bit of both, good and bad. So you have the Mountains of Mirkwood, which is 2 threats, and to travel there, you have to reveal the top card of your encounter deck and add that to the staging area. But after it leaves play as an explored location, each player may search for top 5 cards of his deck for 1 card, add it to his hand, then shuffle the rest of the search cards back into the deck. So this one's got it's nasty to travel there, but it's nice when you get out of it. You have some relief.
This card confused me. I actually did highlight this one as well, because I couldn't work out for the life of me, and maybe I'm overthinking it, if it was better to keep this card in the staging area or travel there. Because in the staging area, it's got a threat of 2. So, okay, yeah, you're going to have to quest each time 2 extra to get past it to make any progress on the quest. But if you travel there, it's got 3 quest points on it. So, okay, admittedly, you only have to do it once, but it's still 1 worse than the threat it was contributing. And I'm going to get another card put into the staging area just by moving there. So I was torn. I travelled there.
It's a risk. I think it depends on your deck, doesn't it, and your situation. If there isn't much in the staging area, you've got a very strong questing deck, you might just want to leave it up there. But if you're just scraping by every time, you probably want to travel and take the risk. But yes, it's a risk, isn't it? You don't know.
So in this so-called nice place of Mirkwood that you're trying to sell me as a travel agent, there's some pretty nasty beasts living there.
Oh, there are. Yes. I was surprised. I think, like yourself, having gone back to this, I actually played this quest a couple of weeks ago with one of the decks I made from the first cycle. So I had a few more kind of high-powered cards in there, and it was this it was a split sphere deck, and I did sail through it really quite quickly. I think I did it in 3 or 4 goes or something. But
a dual sphere deck.
A dual sphere, I beg pardon. But coming back here, just a couple of weeks later, I had forgotten how nasty some of these guys were. You're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, there's your standard orcs. These guys are just your standard orcs. They're fresh from Dol Guldur. And these are the Dol Guldur orcs. When revealed, the first player chooses one character committed to the quest, deal 2 damage to that character.
Yeah, nasty.
It's horrendous.
Yeah, they're horrible, those guys. And they've got very low engagement as well, haven't they?
Yeah, low engagement. They don't have any shield, which is fair enough, but they still take 3 hit points to kill. It's they're not a given.
No, absolutely. And then you've got Chieftain I don't know how to pronounce one. Ufthak.
Chieftain Ufthak.
I mean, he's a nasty beggar, this guy. So he's got 2 threat. He hits for 3. He's got 3 shield, and he's got 6 hit points.
Unbelievable. This is the introductory quest.
Yeah, and not only that, he gets +2. He hits for 2 extra for each resource token on him. Why would he have a resource token on him? Well, forced after Chieftain Uftak attacks, place 1 resource token on him. So every time he attacks, this guy he's going to hit for 2 more as every round goes on. So you want to be taking this guy out as quickly as possible.
You got to get rid of him that first time.
But you got to get 9 on him. He's got a defense of 3 and 6 hit points. So you got to plan this guy pretty well.
Welcome to Lord of the Rings, the card game.
Yes.
Your introductory quest, A Passage Through Mirkwood. Here's your host, Chieftain Uftak.
I'm suddenly imagining him presenting some quiz show.
But if you think that guy's bad, we're not making this up. These cards are all included in the introductory quest. If you think that guy's bad, heaven forbid you turn a corner and you get a face full of hummer horns.
These guys are the worst. I detest these guys.
So hummer horns are some particularly nasty insects. They only have an engagement cost of 40. So if you have a low starting threat, you can keep them in the staging area, and you really have to actually keep them in the staging area as long as possible. And they only contribute 1 threat. So if you can keep them at arm's length. Just if you see a path and there's a load of hummer horns down it, don't go, I think I can get past. You can't. So they have threat of 1. They hit for 2. That's not so bad. No shield. Definitely not so bad. 3 hit points. Piece of cake. However, these insects, they have a forced effect. After hummer horns engage you, deal 5 damage to a single hero you control. There's no putting this damage on your Snowborn Scout. This 5 damage is going bang on your hero's face.
He's nasty. You just want to avoid this guy.
Yeah, and actually there are very few enemies in this whole game where you just think, I'm just going to avoid them forever, rather than I've got to think of a way of taking them out. But these you just absolutely have to avoid, or find a way of taking them out in the staging area.
Or,
I mean, as I'm saying this...
There are a couple of ways, I think. So you can do a quick strike, for example. Oh no, this after it engages you.
Yeah, no, quick strike.
God,
you're already dead. What are you going to quick strike?
Right, you're right.
What are you going to quick strike with your dead elf?
Yeah, you need something something that's going to take him out in the staging area. And there's only a couple of ways to do that, I think.
There's only one guy who likes the hummer horns.
And that's what's the chap's name? The leadership.
Brock Ironfist. Brock Ironfist is sat on the sidelines smoking his pipe, going, I hope those hummer horns come in and kill Gimli. Because I'm ready.
And insects are my speciality. There is I've had a complete mind blank now. What's the name of the other leadership character? A leadership hero, rather.
Gloin?
No, the other one. Who can attack in the staging area?
No, you're thinking of Dunhir from Spirit that we
Yes.
that we talked about before.
That's the one. He can take him out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I said. Okay, so basically what we're saying is, even though there isn't much going on in the quest, and therefore it could be seen as a bit boring in that respect, but actually I don't think it is, because when you're learning the game, not having to worry about the quest also being against you and just learning the mechanics is absolutely fine to start out with. So even though it is an introductory quest in that respect, there are some nice locations, so that's good. But aside from that, this quest will kill you. Be in no doubt. I mean, if you think the enemies are bad, should we talk about some of the treacheries you might come across on your little passage through Mirkwood?
Yeah, there are a couple. Oh, well, but the two I wanted to talk about.
Oh, I wonder if they're the same too. I've got a photo of them.
Okay. Well, the first one was going to be the Necromancer's Reach.
Ding.
Okay, in agreement. And this is when revealed, deal 1 damage to each exhausted character. So you're generally going to see this after you've quested. So basically, anyone who's quested is going to get damaged. Plus, if you've triggered somebody's ability from the beginning, like, I don't know, you had Beorn, who you want to get 2 cards, or what have you, they're getting damaged. Most of your heroes are going to survive this one if they're undamaged at the beginning, but a lot of your allies are going to be in trouble. And obviously, if you have maintained some damage, this can be really nasty. I got this one yesterday, and I think I had 7 characters in play, and then after it, I had 3. It wiped out my entire allies in one fell swoop. So it pretty much lost me the game at that point. But that's a really, really horrible card.
Yeah, it's a nasty bit of work. And what's your second one? Let's see if we go 2 for 2.
My second one was Caught in a Web.
Ding, ding.
We got the same ones. Probably a good sign. So this one is... I love the theming on this. So Caught in a Web, when revealed, the player with the highest threat level attaches this card to one of his heroes. Counts as a condition attachment with the text. Attach hero does not ready during the refresh phase unless you pay 2 resources from that hero's pool. Now this can completely hamstring you. This happened to me last night. I ended up putting it on Denethor because I thought the other 2 I'm definitely going to exhaust every time. But then I needed him to defend, and suddenly I ran out of resource, and it was all a bit of a nightmare. But this is where your chum, mine of Iron Hills, if you play him, he can get rid of his condition. That's what he does. Unfortunately, I didn't have one of him to come in and help me do that.
Yeah, this is particularly nasty, and it can really put an end to your first ever game. There are a few ways of getting around it without the Miner of the Iron Hills. You could have Unexpected Courage, for instance, so you could ready outside of the refresh phase. And you could use Aragorn's ability. Does that work? Yeah, that works, because you could pay 1 resource from him to ready him after he quests, and then as long as you didn't exhaust him again, he would be ready to quest again the next round. Does that work?
That's true, but then that's effectively, you still have to pay 2 resource to have him do 2 actions.
No, you'd only pay 1.
But to have him do 2 actions within a round.
Oh, well, you'd have to pay 3, wouldn't you? Because you'd have to pay 2 for Caught in a Web, and then...
No, I'm saying you'd have to pay 2 additional to have him do the second one, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's not that economic, but there is a way of getting around it. So, but it is indeed pretty unpleasant. Now, what makes webs?
I was trying to think of some witty riposte, but I couldn't think of anything apart from spiders.
What a terrible affliction.
Yes.
I mean, there are some particularly nasty spiders in here, which is not surprising. You are in Mirkwood. But as you alluded to earlier, as you complete the second quest card, you are faced with a choice of a chosen path. And you'll choose one of 2 stage 3s.
Yeah, at random.
At random, indeed. Now, one of these is a simple quest card again that you just have to put the number of quest tokens on and you complete the game. The other, on the other hand...
not quite.
Go ahead.
Because I remember the first time I nearly completed this, I got that one, which is called Beorn's Path. You need to put 10 progress tokens on it, and that's all you need to do. You've done it. Cool. They say players cannot defeat the stage while Ungoliant Spawn is in play.
Aha.
If players defeat the stage, have won a game. And I think I had 9 progress tokens. Now, I was on the verge of victory, and I drew Ungoliant Spawn, so I got the worst of both worlds, where I had to quest for 10, and then Ungoliant Spawn came along and basically killed me. And that was the end of that. So I was very close to winning my first ever game on my own, and that happened.
That's the game.
That's the game.
You said the worst of both worlds there, so it might be worth just reading out what happens if you choose the other path.
Yeah, so the other one's called Don't Leave the Path.
What wise words.
Wise words indeed. And you don't need any progress tokens at all on this one.
Woohoo!
But it's when revealed, each player must search the encounter deck and discard pile for one spider card of his choice and add it to the staging area. Players must find and defeat Ungoliant Spawn to win this game. So, if you haven't already defeated Ungoliant Spawn earlier in the quest, then you're not going to win until Ungoliant Spawn is defeated. So the wise thing to do here, unless you're in really, really, really deep trouble, is that one spider card you search for, you want to bring out Ungoliant Spawn. Kill Ungoliant Spawn, you win the game.
Sorry, you made me think of something. Can you just read the... You said if you haven't already defeated it, do you not have to defeat it again?
I don't think so. It says, when revealed, each player must search the encounter deck and discard pile for one spider card of his choice.
Yep.
And add it to the staging area. The players must... Oh, actually, no. It says the players must find and defeat Ungoliant Spawn to win this game.
I thought so.
So find. So does that mean then if you've already defeated Ungoliant Spawn because you happen to draw it in the encounter deck, you have to go back and defeat it again?
I'm afraid you do.
Oh. Well, I've always chosen... And that's never happened to me. So...
Oh.
But I definitely would have made that mistake as well, I think.
Yeah, probably. But so obviously, obviously you're given a choice to find any one spider. If you're playing by yourself, definitely find Ungoliant Spawn. You'd be foolish just to pick another spider and wait for Ungoliant Spawn to come off of the encounter deck. I just want to bring it back to that quest card for a second, because there actually is an important bit of wording on there. As you read, it says, when revealed, each player must search the encounter deck and discard pile for one spider card of his choice and add it to the staging area. Now, the important word here is add. It doesn't say reveal and add to the staging area. So that means if you choose a spider which has a when revealed effect, that doesn't trigger. And that's quite important because, so therefore Ungoliant Spawn's when revealed effect won't trigger, but it's unlikely that would cause you any grief at this stage anyway. But let's say you're playing a 2-player game and then you reveal, say, the King Spider. That has a nasty when revealed effect. I think it says each player must choose and exhaust one character he controls. But because the quest specifically says add, and not reveal and add, that when revealed effect doesn't trigger, and that can be a lifesaver. Oh, by the way, they soon rectified their mistake, and now nearly every time you have to take a card from the encounter deck, it now says reveal and add.
Is that right? Okay, so that's another one I didn't know. And I think every time I've done this quest, I had been triggering any when revealed effect at that point. So when it says add, it's basically you're not revealing the card, you're literally just putting it in the staging area.
Correct. Yeah.
Magically appears. Yeah. End of story.
Yeah, yeah. But don't get used to it. As I say, they nearly, I'd say 95% of the time, you'll be revealing and getting punished for it.
Yes. But good to know the distinction, though. Add and reveals. That's another one for the list.
Yeah, yeah, but you see, that's a kind of that's a kind of core bit of information, which is almost precisely what precisely what this podcast is about.
No clue, 0 clue. Literally no idea. Why would it be different? It's a good learning curve for me doing this.
Yeah, no, but it's that's a good one then for the new players.
Yeah.
We should let the listeners know what Ungoliant Spawn is. I'm going to change my hat. Game player hat is coming off. Lord of the Rings geek hat coming on. Ungoliant Spawn. Do you know? I mean, do you know who Ungoliant was?
A spider.
Wow. Good guess.
I did know this. Is this in The Hobbit?
No, it's in the Silmarillion.
I read that once a long time ago. So,
okay. Well, it was First Age.
Indeed.
Well, Ungoliant is an evil spirit. If we'll have someone writing in saying that I've got this totally wrong, but I am going by memory here. Ungoliant, I believe, was an evil spirit that took the form of a spider when it was cast into Middle Earth, and had many spawn. This is what I remember. It has many. Basically, it infests the world of Middle Earth with spiders. There is only one named spawn of Ungoliant from Tolkien. Do you want to take a guess who that might be?
Shelob?
Yeah. What a piece of work.
I'm not a fan of spiders. I think, weirdly, giant spiders might be less scary than actual spiders.
How about forces of evil that just take the form of spiders?
Well, that's what spiders are anyway.
Okay. So shall we just...
I have a friend of mine who's convinced that spiders are the most misunderstood creatures. He loves them. He just takes them in his hand and look, it's just a harmless little spider. And I always think, well, you wouldn't do that if we were in Australia, would you? You know, there's a reason you're scared of spiders, right? And here is one of those reasons.
So should we just quickly read out Ungoliant Spawn? I don't know if I have it here.
Yep, I've got it if you want. So he's got a he or she?
She, almost
she
certainly.
Is she, right? Yeah. So Ungoliant Spawn, she has an engagement cost of 32. She's got a threat of 3, hits for 5, defense of 2, and 9 hit points. Nasty piece of work. When revealed, each character currently committed to the quest gets -1 willpower until the end of the phase. So if you draw this when you're about to quest, you're probably going to fail. But not only that, then you have to try and defeat this creature as well. And she's a toughie.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky because I was playing Gimli, and we'll be talking tactics next week. But I had Gimli, and he was beefed up to the max. So by the time I got to the last card, I did choose the path with Ungoliant Spawn, and I just chopped her head clean off.
And did you lose anybody first, or was it?
I did lose Eowyn, but not at that stage. I'm trying to think. I think I probably lost her to some nasty treachery, probably. Yeah. See, I mean, I managed to play Lord of the Rings without losing a hero. I would say 90% of the time. I went back and played the first quest. Eowyn, dead as a doornail.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it? I mean, I've struggled with it since going back to it. But it's actually a really good quest, this one. I think I've really enjoyed going back and doing this again.
I think thematically it's lovely, and like I say, I do think it has just the right number of mechanics to teach you the game, and it certainly doesn't hold your hand.
No, totally agree with that. And I like the way it's set up at the beginning. So it will straight away reveal a location, it reveals an enemy. So from your very first round, it's basically making you deal with all the different situations. You have an enemy with an engagement cost of 25, so you're likely going to have combat in your first round as well. And the way they've put that Old Forest Road in, where you can ready a character as soon as you travel there, it means you can quest successfully and you can still have enough people there for a fight as well. So the way it's just set up from the very beginning, I think is really, really neat. So your first round that you ever play probably takes ages. You're checking everything, aren't you? You know, your first round ever will take half an hour to get through. But yeah, it's a very enjoyable quest. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think what's nice is that chances are the first time you play this game, like the first time ever you play this game, you will probably lose miserably, and often that's a good thing. It really sets up its stand and says, look, this game is not going to be a piece of cake, so you better learn how to play it if you want to get the most from it. And I think you either embrace that or you don't. But I think the vast majority of people who come into these sort of games really appreciate that it is going to be a bit of a challenge.
Yes, totally. And I did fail miserably a number of times before I beat this.
Well, yesterday.
And indeed, indeed now.
Okay, well, I think there's not much more to say about A Passage Through Mirkwood apart from, good job, Fantasy Flight. It's a nice way to start the game. Okay, so I think we better move on. So I think it's time for our Fact of the Week. Again, no jingle. So this is the part of the show where we methodically go through all the FAQs one by one and see if there are any unanswered questions, see if there's anything new to discuss about them, or whether or not they're self-explanatory. And so this week the fact goes, question: does the effect on Legolas place progress tokens on an active location if there is one? And the answer is yes, always place progress tokens on an active location instead of the quest, unless the ability specifically states to bypass any active location. I think actually this is an important fact because this is one which is confusing to new players. There's one line in the rulebook which states that an active location always acts as a buffer to the current quest. So what that means is that basically any time that you would be adding progress, it must always go on the location first. And why I think new players find this maybe a touch confusing is that there are also several treacheries and the like that state that progress tokens are removed from the quest. Now, when that happens, they come off of the quest card, not the location. And to some people, that can seem contradictory. The way I like to see it is that when the heroes are battling their way through their quest, they are in that location. So when Legolas's effect, which we should actually mention what it is.
That's true. Yep.
Basically, Legolas has an effect that when he participates in a fight where you kill an enemy, you can place a progress token on the current quest. So in that respect, it would go on the location first. So as I was saying, the way I would always like to see it, they're battling away in that location. So they get a bit further because of Legolas, but they don't go beyond that. Whilst, let's say, Sauron's forces are working behind the scenes to damage your progression, they could be chipping away at any progression you've already made on the main quest, even though you're in a different location. So that's how I would see it thematically, that quest tokens come off of the quest card when specified, and not the location. I mean, there are plenty of treacheries that say take progress tokens off a location, so don't think you're getting away scot-free. You're going to lose progress tokens.
Yeah, and maybe something's happened whereby you're in a location and you have to take a different direction out of that location, or you got held up for whatever reason. And it does tend to work thematically really well when you look at the individual cards. So it does make sense. But yes, I think the overall rule is location first, then quest card, if you're adding progress.
Yeah, always, unless it specifically says. I mean, I think there may be a specific cards which say place a quest token onto the current quest card, and it would have to say quest card, not quest.
Okay, that's a good one to know. So if it says quest, that means it goes on the current location. If it says quest card, you put it on the quest card.
I believe so. Let me just quickly find Legolas. Let me just see what the actual wording on his card is.
Well, I think Legolas is clear. That's always the active location, isn't it? If there is an active location. And that's what the fact says.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just curious to see how they word it, whether or not they say quest. So the actual wording on Legolas says, response. After Legolas participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, place 2 progress tokens on the current quest.
So that's either active location if there is one, else it goes on the quest card.
Exactly.
Yeah. Clear. Okay.
Alrighty. So it's that time of the show where we like to spread the love and mention some other resources that are out there which could help you in your journeys through Middle-earth. And this week, it's a biggie. It's a biggie. I would like to highlight Board Game Geek. Now, chances are, if you're listening to this, you already know what Board Game Geek is. But there's also a chance that you found us through another means. And also, I just think we should just sing its praises because for our hobby, there is no better single resource. And not just for Lord of the Rings, for any other style of tabletop gaming, board game, card game, you name it, they've got a page for it. The community is always friendly. They are always willing to answer questions. They always welcome new players. And I think it's the number one place you should be heading if you have any questions about rules or deck building or anything really. It's wonderful and they deserve your attention and support.
I don't think I've ever used it.
Okay, that's been Late of the Rings.
However, I have kept my searches on forums, that kind of thing, to an absolute minimum. And I probably have used it without realising. Where I just click on a search result and someone's posted an answer on a forum somewhere. But what I mean is I haven't got to the point yet where I've created an account on a forum and contributed or what have you. At the moment, I'm really just looking the odd thing up about a rule or something like that, or a card, which I'm a bit confused about, and just keeping it to that, essentially. So far.
Oh yeah, and that's fine, and this is definitely the place to look for sure. And you're probably right when you are googling these questions. Almost certainly, the place where the answer is Board Game Geek. But it's also not just for rules. If you want to go there and just read some nice articles or reviews, or just generally get involved with the Lord of the Rings, the card game community, it's definitely the place I would head.
Cool.
Alrighty. And by the way, on that note, I have set up a thread on Board Game Geek specifically for the podcast. So if you want to get in touch with us through that, you are more than welcome. Just hunt it down. Okay, I think that just about wraps it up for today. So coming up next time, I think we're going to be looking at the more core set cards, probably tactics, and maybe we'll bundle spirit into that as well, because we already mentioned quite a few of the spirit cards in episode 1, so maybe we'll have time just to do them both. And if you're game, Emery, I think we should take a journey down the Anduin.
Fantastic. I like that one a lot. And
me too.
I think what we'll find now, as we discussed in this episode, Passage Through Mirkwood, that's really an introductory kind of quest. I think what we'll start seeing now, even from Journey Down the Anduin, is how the theming really starts to come into play, but the sort of game mechanics and the theme. So, yeah, very much looking forward to that one.
Yeah, me too. It really is, to this day, a standout quest. So, there's a few ways you can get in touch with us if you want to. We have a Twitter account, @Late of the Rings. I've actually put a few things up there now, so it's not the barren landscape it was last week. We have an email address, which is lateoftherings@gmail.com, and that Board Game Geek thread. So, yeah, feel free to get in touch. So, all it leaves me to say is take care out there. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.